Thanks, Michelle. Very good afternoon, everyone. Well, this season marks the NBA League's 79th year, and this week we'll see the defending champions, the Boston Celtics, receive their championship rings ahead of their highly anticipated game against the New York Knicks. I'm now joined by former South African basketball captain and analyst, Quintin Denyssen, to discuss what makes this season unique, including the standout players of African descent, star player moves, and of course the legacy of the NBA legend DMB Mutombo. Quintin, thanks so much for coming on to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So plenty to talk about in a few minutes, but let's start off with the energy around the opening night. The Boston Celtics. There is talk that they could make it another championship on the trot. How do you rate their chances?
Well, I think I rate the chances as pretty good. You know, they take over their legacy as the most successful NBA club in the history of the NBA. So 18th championship that they picked up last year on the play of Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, and it made it for very exciting viewing. You know, as a fan and just watching in. And you see the energy that's been translated into this year's preseason. The preseason games have not been like traditional preseason games. If you've ever had the opportunity to watch, it's like the teams have ramped up the intensity and they are treating these games as if they are already in season. And I think that's because of the in-season tournament that was introduced last year that the Lakers won. And it's just given a whole new energy to the NBA season. Whether it's season number 79, it's just exciting. And I think the visibility of the league around the world has just increased the interest immensely.
Yeah, you talk about interest across the world. Now, there were a number of players of African descent or African players last time out, I think 15 at the time of asking. How are African players or players of African origin performing in the NBA? And who do we look out for this season?
Well, I have a particular interest because of the fact that I was born on the continent and I played the game here. I never had the chance to go across to the league, but Joel Embiid obviously is a name that's well familiar to viewers who follow the NBA. The player from Cameroon picked up the MVP award in 2023, someone to keep an eye on. And because he's just recently spoken about the fact that he might never be able to play back-to-back games again for the Philadelphia 76ers. This is going to have an impact, especially with Paul George, who comes across for the 76ers. So that's a storyline you want to keep an eye on. I particularly going to keep an eye on Jonathan Kuminga at Golden State Warriors because he came across here for the Basketball Without Borders program that the NBA runs. And being from Congo again, looking at his progress last year, inserted himself into a lineup alongside Steph Curry and Draymond Green in this year, looking to make the leap and actually become an NBA superstar. So someone that I want to keep an eye on, particularly there. From the Basketball Africa League this year, a young player by the name of Ulrich Chomche. So he was picked up by the Raptors, 57th draft pick. He played in the Basketball Africa League. I was there commentating some of those games, looking at his development, and now the fact that he's actually made the leap. So born on the continent, played all of his basketball here at the NBA Academy in Senegal, and then was drafted straight from the continent to the Toronto Raptors. That's
absolutely massive. So a player that we want to look out for. But what makes interesting pickings in this season is that one young man, Bronny James, famous because of his dad, liked to play with LeBron, who turns 40 this December.
Well, you look at the way American fans are treating Bronny James and, you know, the amount of interest, and I feel like he gets the short end of the stick, but the first father-son duo in the history of the NBA. So LeBron James, 22nd season, that's already crazy in its own conception. And then you've got young Bronny James, who's a 55th pick, who's getting the same attention as a first-round draft pick, you know. So going to keep an eye on
How much of a talent is he, though?
He's a talent. If you get your name onto an NBA roster, you are one of about, let's say, a spectrum of 490 to 510 players at any given time that have been able to make the jump from 500 million basketball players worldwide. Wow. Your name on the roster indicates talent. You can't fake that.
So it doesn't matter if you're a first draft pick or if you're 75th.
It doesn't matter. The talent is undeniable. You don't just get your name on a roster, even if your dad is one of the most famous basketball players, arguably the most famous basketball player in the world. In order to get your name on there, you have to have a little bit of talent. I'm going to throw in
Michael Jordan right in there. I suppose that's always a conversation, always a battle that people are going to have. But I want to talk about DMB Mutombo's legacy. Now, the NBA lost a legend, incredible individual. I think he was still relatively young, 56 or if I'm not mistaken, but he wasn't an old man, and he died of brain cancer from what we understand. What sort of legacy does DMB Mutombo leave for lovers of basketball?
I think he leaves an immeasurable legacy. So first of all, from pathway from the continent, and I talked about a pathway now in terms of from Chamche. Dikembe was one of the originals alongside Hakeem Olajuwon. So, 4-time Defensive Player of the Year. His impact, his jersey's been retired by 2 teams in the NBA. That's his playing legacy, but I think his legacy in terms of a global ambassador for the game. He became the first ambassador for the NBA globally post-playing, and the work that he's done here on the continent is something that will stand the test of time, I think. So going back to where he was from, the hospital that he built in the name of his mom, and the work he's done with the Basketball Africa League. He was one of the pioneers, one of the first people to make sure that the NBA took notice of the Basketball Africa League. So a living legacy for him, I think, is the fact that the Basketball Africa League exists and it continues to be played. But his role as a humanitarian is immeasurable. You see it by the amount of notes of sympathy that were sent in for him, and then also just his global impact on the game will never be forgotten, and we will hear his name. And that's why I'm wearing his vest. You know, it's NBA Jersey Day, but it's to pay tribute to one of the greatest African basketball players, who was not only a great basketball player, but a great man as well.
All right, before we wrap up, Chris Paul, now playing for San Antonio Spurs, 39 years of age, just a year younger than LeBron James. But are we seeing more and more players playing out till they're a little bit older? And just how much can he still give?
I think we're seeing the opposite, because the NBA has 60 players up to 100 players that come in every year. The draft is that 60 players up, 60 players down. So to stay in the league is tough. So 39 years old and still being given an opportunity to play with an up-and-coming superstar in Victor Wembanyama, it's probably going to be one of the best storylines in this year's NBA. So I think from a 22-win season, because that's what the Spurs had this year, to improving that record, playing with one of the best players in the world currently. Chris Paul has just extended his career by making that move, and I think the Spurs definitely going to improve their record. The question really is how much can he enhance his own game alongside one of the best players in the game currently.
So, give us a call. Is it going to be Celtics? Maybe Lakers?
I am going the direction of the Celtics. They have a chip on their shoulder, especially after the Olympics. And Jason Tatum sitting down twice was one of the narratives. Jaylen Brown wasn't even selected for Team USA. They both are disgruntled, and I think we're going to see them go even harder this year.
All right. Well, I look forward to another conversation. Quintin Denyssen, former South African basketball captain and basketball analyst, speaking to us about the upcoming NBA season. You're watching Daytime Update, top of the hour, reminder of the day's leading stories. Don't go away.